The Mexican-American War, a rivalry between which river the border ended at. From 1846 to 1848, Mexico and the United States clashed over the annexation of Texas after they gained their independence from Mexico in 1836. Mexico organized border raids and threatened that any attempt to invade would mean war. After the 1844 election of President James K. Polk, the U.S. invaded Texas without hesitation. Polk wanted to buy the lands known today as California and its surrounding states, but his purchases were denied. Due to the rejection, he sent troops into the land between the Rio Grande and the Nueces River, which was part of the Mexican state Coahuila at the time. It was the start of a war that would last for 2 years. The Battle of Palo Alto and the Battle of Resaca de la Palma. On April 25th, 1846, a group of Mexican cavalry attacked General Zachary Taylor's soldiers in between the two rivers, killing about a dozen. Then, the Mexicans continued their siege onto an American fort along the Rio Grande. Taylor called in for reinforcements and won the Battle of Palo Alto and Resaca de la Palma. After these two battles were won, President Polk told Congress, "Cup of forbearance has been exhausted. Even before Mexico passed the boundary of the United States, invaded our territory, and shed American blood upon American soil." The Americans declared war on May 13, 1846. No official declaration of war was sent by Mexico. At this time, only about 75,000 Mexicans lived north of the Rio Grande, making it easy for American soldiers led by Colonel Stephen W. Kearny and Commodore Robert F. Stockton to attack with minimal resistance. General Zachary Taylor had no issues advancing and managed to capture Monterrey in September. With many losses, Mexico turned to General Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna, who had been living in exile in Cuba. Santa Anna was hired by Mexico to persuade President Polk that if he was allowed to go back to Mexico, he would end the war, making sure that the Americans won. When Santa Anna arrived at Mexico, he instantly turned his back on America and took control of the Mexican army, leading them into the Battle of Buena Vista in February of 1847. Mexico suffered many deaths during this battle, and even though they lost the Battle of Buena Vista, Santa Anna assumed the Mexican presidency the month after. Battle of Veracruz. While the Battle of Buena Vista was coming to an end, American forces led by General Winfield Scott advanced to Veracruz and captured the city. Then they began their march on Mexico City, traveling along the same route Hernan Cortez followed when he attacked the Aztec Empire. Mexico fought back at Cerro Gordo and other places, but they were beaten every time. In September of 1847, Scott attacked Chapultepec Castle in Mexico City. During the Battle of Veracruz, a group of Mexican cadets in military school called the Niños Heroes despised the thought of surrendering so much that they committed suicide instead. End of the war. Santa Anna resigned from the Mexican presidency due to the loss of the war. Americans then waited until Mexico could form a new government so they could make negotiations. On February 2, 1848, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo was signed, thus establishing the Rio Grande and not the Nueces River as the Mexican-American border. Along with the treaty, Mexico began to recognize Texas as a part of the U.S. and agreed to sell California and the rest of the territory north of the border for $15 million, not including the cost for damage inflicted. Another victory for the expanding country of America. Two key events of the war. The Mexicans hardly ever won during the entire war. The United States military was far more advanced, allowing them to win almost every battle. One reason the war began was because of a dispute over which river marked the border. The Mexicans wanted the border to reach the Nueces River, and the Americans wanted the border to reach the Rio Grande, the Nueces River further up north than the Rio Grande. Biotime. President James K. Polk. He campaigned that Texas should be re-annexed, Oregon Territory should be reoccupied, and had his eyes on California, New Mexico, and the area we know today as the Southwest. He also began the annexation of Texas, thus starting the war. General Zachary Taylor. the general who led the Americans at the battles of Palo Alto and Resaca de la Palma. He succeeded in many of the battles he fought. General Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna, hired by Mexico to pretend to be helping the Americans, but he then turned on them and led the Mexicans to battle. Despite the loss of this battle, he still assumed the Mexican presidency but later resigned when he lost the war.